slammed you, he didn't bump you, he didn't nudge you, he rubbed you. And rubbing's son is racing.
And welcome everybody to Locked On iRacing. We are doing another interview. I am Peter Wilkinson. I'm joined by Braden Martin, but we are joined tonight by the superstar extraordinaire, Beau Albert. How you going, mate?
Oh, it's always nice to be here. Thanks for the warm welcome.
No problems at all, mate. That's probably the nicest things we're going to say about you all night. No. Welcome to the podcast. Look, explain to everyone who's listening who Beau Albert is.
So basically, I've been fortunate enough to become one of the first full-time sim racers in all of Australia, thanks to Altus Esports gaining the Altus Esports team house. So sim racing is my job, so that's probably one of the big sort of factors about me at the moment. But currently, finding my way to get back into the Rallycross World Championship. That's what I love doing. It's my bread and butter. But I've also got a history in the Road World Championship as well in iRacing. So I love competing at the really high level stuff, even though most of the time I end up pulling my hair out with it.
That sounds about right. I don't think there's a thing I haven't seen you drive in iRacing. Is that fair? Is there anything that you just don't go near?
So one of the things I really like trying to do on iRacing is getting like the highest combined iRating. So you're probably right. I do end up driving just about everything. So I do dirt oval stuff, dirt road, and oval. I do all of it. But if there's anything I'm going to stick away from, it's dirt oval typically, because you'd think turning left is easy, but you throw dirt on it and I just cannot figure it out for the life of me. Just doesn't gel. So
dirt and banking and other cars just wants to go right for some reason. It's really weird. I don't understand it. Look, I've seen you. I've actually raced against you in ovals with the Scrap Series, and you're doing Rallycross at the moment. We saw you in the majors. We actually mentioned your Indianapolis. Did you go in Indianapolis? Were you in the majors? No, I'm thinking about Camp Dance. How I?
I did do
it's on your mind.
Yeah, there's so many things going on at the moment. But look, I've seen you race. That's where it was. Tracks. You were racing the open wheelers in the tracks.
Yes.
Rival Series. That's what it was. So I'm everywhere you turn up. V8s. You were in Scops the other weekend as well.
Yep.
Is there something that jumps out to you that, yes, this is what I want to do besides Rallycross? Or in the Rallycross, you got a favourite car that you drive?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always sort of fallen in love with the Porsche Cup car on iRacing. I absolutely adore it because with most GT cars, like you have to drive like smooth and precise, and it's all about managing stuff. Whereas the Porsche Cup car, you just have to throw it around. You just attack it into every single corner, and I adore that. I think it is brilliant. And it's easily one of my favorite cars to drive. It is just so much fun. And that's, if I'm going to race anything other than Rallycross, that's usually where I find myself.
And what's your Rallycross car of choice?
So for so long, it was the Volkswagen. But the Suburu has won all three world championships in
it's hard
Rallycross.
To go past that kind of stuff, isn't it?
It really is. So I've reluctantly, I was kicking and screaming on my way, but I've switched over to the Suburu now, and things are going well anyway.
Okay, let's go way back. Okay, we've gone way into the podcast of the stuff that we're going to talk about a lot later. But where did you start? What was your first gaming, first sim racing? What was that like back in the day? Where did you start?
So my sim racing career really started way back on Formula 1 2013 on the PS3.
Oh, way back.
Way back. Not all the way back, but for me, it feels way back.
Yep.
And just started out on some local leagues there, playing around in that game before I eventually moved over to Gran Turismo 6. And that was sort of my first taste of not obviously a full simulation, but something a bit more on the realistic side of things. And I loved that. So from that moment on, I started saving up for a computer for iRacing, but obviously computers aren't cheap. So ended up moving over to a PlayStation 4 for a little while and played around on Project Cars just to sort of get a bit closer to the simulation side of things, which was a lot of fun, and I loved that. But over a few years, I finally managed to get the savings all hooked up. And in 2017, I made my way onto iRacing.
We had Emily Jones on the podcast recently, who is pretty involved in Gran Turismo, and it's kind of a world that I haven't explored that much since way back in the GT2 and GT3 days. How involved in the Gran Turismo scene did you get?
So I really enjoyed it. So I competed at sort of like a national level with like just local Australian-based leagues. But in 2015, there was actually quite a large community series that was run by GT Planet, which is an extremely large organization over on the Gran Turismo side of things. And they ran a competition which ended up with 190 other drivers. So at the time, obviously before the like GT Sport World Tours and stuff were a thing, that's what I competed in for a little while, and went relatively well. I'm not going to say I was, dominating or anything. I won the odd race, but yeah, that was a very competitive series, and that was probably the closest I would ever get to going into a GT World Tour or something. Because I think the level of those these days is just astronomically high, and unless you're dedicating almost your entire sim racing journey onto the Gran Turismo platform, it'd be very hard to make it onto.
It always blew my mind after, well, I say always, after talking to Emily, how big the GT scene is. Like, I guess I found my way into iRacing, and it's awesome, it's amazing, and it feels like everyone should just be playing this one simulation. But then you've got this whole other side that's obviously got the backing of Sony, and when you have backing of a company like that, there's so much money involved. It was kind of crazy when we delved into that a little bit further.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you also have to remember that Gran Turismo has a partnership, the only partnership at the moment of its kind, with the FIA, obviously one of the biggest motorsport organizations in the world. So, for Gran Turismo to have the backing of someone like that behind you, they've got to be doing something right.
Well, I think you touched on it perfectly before. Your barrier of entry to get into a PC racing sim is that much higher because you've got to buy a PC that's, a couple of $1,000, where 100 odd million people have a PS4, and all they've got to really do is pick up Gran Turismo Sport and a $300 Logitech, $400 Logitech wheel, and all of a sudden they're racing and they can dedicate their whole life to it. So it's such a small barrier to entry. And even with well, not so much PSVR, but you can get pretty simulated stuff if you get the right setup on PlayStation 4 for a fraction of the price you can on PC. So it's not surprising. I came up through that sort of side of things as well, of the whole Gran Turismo series, but it definitely doesn't have anything on the iRacing for my enjoyment levels. But it's definitely a great breeding ground, and you hear many stories. Like, I still remember back in the day when the Australia Post guy won the GT World
Matt
Series
Simmons?
from Australia, and all of a sudden he's racing real life cars, and like it's such a clear defined path for certain people. So it's crazy. But now I think iRacing, being in that scene, is definitely getting closer to that, and I think with the NASCAR partnership, there's things that are going to come out of that, obviously, but hopefully the FIA or someone like that jumps on board as well. But what's the difference? Like, you've obviously driven both, like not as seriously on the Gran Turismo, I guess, as what you're in the iRacing, but what do you found the differences between the two?
I think the biggest thing really is that Gran Turismo is just a lot more accessible as to drive. So sort of there's that, it's a little bit easier. It's still on the simulation side of things, but it's a little bit more skewed back to arcade, to the point where, it's not as challenging to drive overall. So that there's still those niches to go fast, but at the same time, if you make a massive mistake, it's not going to punish you quite as hard as iRacing. So things like, damage, obviously in iRacing, if we find ourselves firing into a wall, then that's going to be our race over. Whereas on Gran Turismo, it's just sort of, oh bugger, I've messed that corner up, on we go.
We'll
so
take
that's
that 2-second penalty and we'll keep going.
Yeah, don't get me started on the collision penalties on that game. That is absolutely horrific. But
so you don't want to see that implemented in iRacing. Okay.
No. I mean, the slowdowns are bad enough.
Yeah. We've had a little bit of a discussion about this before, but how do you see the whole iRating and penalty system in iRacing, since you're right in the world now?
Yeah, so I think the iRating kind of thing is not too bad. Like, obviously it can be abused. You can obviously farm iRacers.
Like Braden is right now, yeah, cool.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's a struggle, it's a grind. But yeah, no, I think the iRating thing isn't too bad. And I like what iRacing have done in terms of special events, how it's now everyone combined who goes into like the top splits and everything. I think that's fine. The penalty system, I think iRacing are working on it. Obviously, we saw the implementation in the later season at Spa, where the track limit detection was quite a lot different. So that's a lot better. But obviously, there's still the controversial 4x penalties that you can be totally not at fault for an incident, and yet you still cop a penalty, which does lead to some very interesting strategies. I don't want to call them strategies, but there's no other word for it really, just in the Pro Series, where you might have, quite a lot of... you might not have any penalty points at that point in the season. It's getting late in the season when some people, not to name names, definitely do get the elbows out and are willing to use those penalty points they haven't got yet to give themselves a bit of an advantage later on. So the penalty system does need work, but at the same time, I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect solution for that type of thing.
No.
It's funny in the league. I was going to say in the league that we're racing in at the moment, it's quite interesting that that same sort of thing's happening where there's a reward for getting a 0x for the race. So you've got first place 0x, and then second place behind them have already got their off track, so they're free to abuse the limits to the most they can. It's made for some really interesting racing, and do you toss up between, do you want to really save those extra 2 points that you're going to get for the 0x, or defend a little bit harder, because depending if you manage to hold on to just stay second, you might still end up with the same points as the guy who's currently behind you anyway. So it's led to some interesting battles, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, it does lead to those situations, and whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it makes for good viewing anyway.
Okay. Once again, we've got way off track now, which I love doing. But let's go back. What did your rig first look like back in the day? What was the first simulated peripherals you got?
So the very first, I don't want to call it a sim rig. It was more just a wheel bolted onto this really big lounge, desk type thing. But then my seat that I used was actually like a lounge room recliner seat. And it was so uncomfortable to drive because it was obviously so comfy and laid backwards as well in the seat. It was very, very awkward. So I remember stuffing pillows behind my back, so I'd be seated a little bit more upright. It was purely thrown together. But I used that for probably a good 3 or so years, way longer than I should have.
You never fell asleep while driving in an enduro?
I was tempted. Sometimes racing at Le Mans, those long straights, you considered it. You really did.
Just put my alarm on for 3 minutes and I'll set quick here.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, after that, I got a Next Level Racing GT Ultimate V2, and I used that for a long, long time. And that was a lot nicer. I still used the Logitech Driving Force GT for a little while before I moved to a G29. So I used Logitech equipment for quite a while there. And yeah, I used that for a good 4 years, even a few years into my iRacing career. And now I've sort of done what I think all sim racers sort of work towards in the end, and gone for a full 80/20 setup.
Yep. That's what I'm trying to work for at the moment, even though I'm no good, but it's going to help me nonetheless, I reckon. Hopefully, anyway. It would help my wallet. So let's let's move into some other stuff that we want to actually talk about tonight, which is, let's go to Altus G Esports. Now, they're making a huge run at Scops at the moment. I'm being very impressed by the way they've taken on Trans-Tasman this season. And obviously, you're not part of that, but you have done a couple of races. But what's it like being in Altus itself?
It's a very cool experience because everyone is so motivated and we're all sort of helping one another. It is a very, very good team environment to be on. And, that's sort of why I joined the team in June 2018. And I've really had no intentions of ever leaving because it is such a good environment. Because, we obviously have quite a lot of different disciplines we have under our banner. We have oval, we have road racing, dirt oval, dirt road, rallycross, all that stuff. But there's a lot of crossover as well. So, for example, Tim Ryan, who was our 2018 World of Outlaws iRacing World Champion, who runs under the Altus banner, he is so often jumping into the V8 supercar channels, helping Jordan Caruso, Cooper Webster, James Scott, helping with telemetry, helping set up the cars, spring rates, dampers, all that good stuff. So it's not just one section of the team focuses on one thing. Everybody in the broader team is always helping each other. And that relates again to our GT side of things. The V8 supercar guys then will say, okay, well, we do this with brake bias over a stint. Have you guys tried that in the GT cars? So it's a very cool, group to work with. Everyone's motivated. Everyone's helping each other. And yeah, I think that's a big reason why we are having success in V8 Scops at the moment. It's just purely because the motivation is there and we're all working quite well as a team.
Yeah, definitely. How did you find yourself in Altus back in June? Was it June or July 2018?
Yeah, June 2018 when the team first formed. So I was a part of Evolution Racing Team beforehand. And from there, I met, at the time, Evolution Racing Team manager Simon Feigl. So me and him sort of, worked together for a little bit there at Evolution Racing Team. And for, there was just a lot of drivers at the time at ERT and things were clashing. Things weren't working well at all. So I ended up moving away and was just a privateer for a month or two. And Simon, about a week after I left ERT, decided to leave as well, and sort of, said, I want to make my own team. I want to do my own thing. And it actually took me a bit of convincing to actually join along with his new projects. I thought, he was obviously a team manager at ERT. I thought, are things going to be different to ERT, or is it just going to be ERT round two? But in the end, I decided to take a punt and join up on Altus as well. And it's sort of gone from strength to strength there. But it was really just through meeting Simon at ERT and then just developing that relationship through to Altus.
What made you jump into Evolution into the team atmosphere in the start? Was it obviously to just improve your own stuff, or you wanted to find people to actually race with?
Yeah, it was more so just to improve myself. I joined iRacing in March 2017, and I joined into raceonoz.com as a team, but I wasn't really getting the help I needed there. So I floated around a little bit through a few different teams, admittedly, for a little while. But again, I just wasn't getting the support I needed, or I didn't feel like I sort of had the drivers around me I could use to sort of develop myself as a driver. And then eventually I got asked to join into, at the time, Evolution Racing Team's junior driver program, which was called the ERT Hornets. So they had a junior driver program. I was 2 months on iRacing at this point in time, so I was sort of like a perfect candidate for that. And I thought it was a great opportunity because at the time, that was the season where ERT came second and third in the first round of the GT World Championship, and I thought, well, these guys are able to compete at the top level in GT, so they can't be too bad to learn from.
That's it. How much did that help you those early days?
It helped me so much in terms of just driving technique. Like there was so many little things that I'd been doing on Gran Turismo, Project Cars, F1, all the F1 games from Codemasters at the time that made sort of bad driving habits that didn't work on iRacing. So I remember one of the first sessions I ever did in the team, they were telling me that I needed to trail brake more. And I just turned around and was like, what's trail braking? Like, what is that? So there were so many like little things that I wasn't sure what I was doing. And
is that where you let the handbrake off slightly as you go around the corner? Is that?
I think so. It's when you like drop the clutch or something. I'm not sure. No. So they taught me so many little details that I would have never learnt on my own, and that was exactly what I was looking for. Is what are the top guys doing that are just totally going over my head at that point in time? So fuel saving techniques, race strategy, braking, throttle techniques. It was really really good, and I definitely think if I didn't make that step to join ERT at that time, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah. And when did you jump straight into did you say I have to do Rallycross from the start as well? Or was that something you got into on your own accord?
Yeah, so when Rallycross first came out, I did do a little bit of it. I sort of just dabbled in the odd race or two, but then I sort of went off to focus on my GT efforts for a good year and a half or so, and I totally forgot Rallycross existed.
And iRace members do, I think.
Yeah, I know, it's so unfortunate. So yeah, ended up coming back to Rallycross about early 2019, and that's when I sort of realized that I'm actually not, too bad at Rallycross, and I should, probably stick with it a bit more. And yeah, things just sort of went from strength to strength there. But it is a shame that Rallycross just does not get the participation, because I think if more people tried it, then it would become quite popular, because it is a proper fun bit of racing. It's close quarters, super fast cars, super short races as well. So it's not like you're taking a huge chunk of time out of your day. I think it's the perfect formula for racing almost. It's so high excitement, but it just doesn't gel with the Australian community, at least.
I was going to say, is there anything specific you think that stirs people away? Is it like a bit of a fear factor, or not quite understanding it, or maybe like when you first jump in, is it quite difficult the first few times, so people try it and then go, well, this is not for me? Or what do you think?
Yeah, potentially it is that last little part where it is quite difficult to sort of get your head around at first, because you do have to drive the cars very, very strangely, in the fact that we're always driving in quite high gears. We're almost always using throttle management. And also, I think a lot of people sort of take the Ken Block approach a little bit too far when it comes to Rallycross. So they enter a corner and just rip the handbrake for a good 3 seconds and wonder why the lap time isn't there. So it probably is a bit of a driving technique thing why it isn't more popular. But then, I'll often see the odd driver pop in, for 1 or 2 races, slowly get the hang of it, and they're just hooked. They just stay around for a few months at a time. So it would be cool. I try and do like little video tutorials as often as I can to sort of explain the basics of Rallycross to sort of get it that little bit more popular, but hasn't quite had the effect that I'd like because we're still getting relatively low participation, but is what it is.
I like that they've changed so it was C was the highest class. They've now made the B licensed tier, which means they're working on it. You can see that there's a progression they're trying to get there. They're adding more tracks in, and they've added the light versions of the cars, which is also really good. But it definitely would have to be something to do with you got to use your brake more to turn that car in and manage that brake, which is something that especially road drivers don't get, and oval drivers. There's a brake. What are you talking about?
Don't need any of that.
No, that's it. The ones I've found is when I've been with 5 people in the race, and you get taken out first jump, and the jumps are definitely something that can scare people away, because if you don't get them right, you're out.
Yeah.
But it is a lot more
very,
forgiving,
very
I've found, with the X's. So you can really do some side bumping and get away with a 0x all the way around the track, which is something a bit different, which is good. But I wish it would get better. Any suggestions for iRacing since we've got you here?
Well, it's actually funny you mentioned the whole license progression thing, because I actually don't think that was the best thing imaginable for the Rallycross community, just from the perspective of it's now spread out more series.
Further, yep.
So, we sort of don't get any races at all in the B class licenses. I don't think I've done more than 2 races this year, which is a shame because I adore Rallycross. So, it'd be nice if, we could sort something maybe for Australian servers where, it is a bit more condensed in terms of series. But in terms of just entry to Rallycross, I mean, I think people just need to give it a shot and don't give up on it in the first 15 minutes. Like, at least commit half an hour to an hour on it and just learn that you don't need to slide the car too much. Just really focus on slow in, fast out, because that's how these cars do like to be driven. They've got a lot of power, so make sure you get the car slowed in at the start and then really power out. And you'll usually cut your lap times down pretty significantly just from that, and learning that sideways isn't always the best way.
Definitely.
Looks cool, though.
Yeah, it does look cool. And slam that brake down before you go over the jump. You get that nose pointing down, not pointing up. You don't
Absolutely.
want that. So, look, obviously we're back to Altus again. Obviously they've made a big move in the last month or so, and as you mentioned, you're now full-time sim racer in Australia. Is it the first one? That's what you said before?
So it's the first gaming house in Australia.
Yeah.
I believe there might be 1 or 2 other drivers who are full-time, but I don't know how publicly they've made that they are only doing sim racing.
So what's it like living in the Altus G e-house, Altus G house, Logitech house? My God, words.
No, it's very, very cool. Of course, at the moment, there's only 2 sims set up because we're still waiting on our next 2 housemates to be announced, which I absolutely cannot get into.
Yes, you can. 100%. Let's go now.
No one listens, we promise.
All right, so drive. So the
hey, is that
first
Caruso in the background moving in? What the hell?
Oh, get out of shot, mate. No, so it's very, very cool. Obviously, being able to sort of commit your entire day to it, and it's not just like we're driving 24/7 on the sim. We're also doing a lot of other things to help us as drivers. So we're doing a bit of mental training as well. We've obviously got a bit of a home gym set up as well, so we can do physical training as well. We're trying to sort of make sure that we can be the most complete drivers imaginable, not just from a driving point of view, but like even media training and all of that good stuff. So it is very, very exciting. We're doing a lot of cool things. But right now, in terms of a day-to-day, I think we're really just sort of finding our feet right now. And make sure you stay tuned to all the Altus socials, because we've got some very cool announcements coming soon about exactly what we'll be doing on a day-to-day basis, and some additions to the sim house as well.
And when are you starting the cooking streams?
Cooking streams won't be taking place for me, at least, because I should not be within 15 meters of an oven.
That's why there should be a cooking stream, exactly for that reason.
If there was a cooking stream, there'd be
what
no
can
more
Beau
Altus
burn
house
tonight?
No, it would honestly not go well. So I've really limited myself to just pastas and just like 2-minute noodles. Anything else, I will cause a fire.
Okay,
it's like
so
the Simpsons episode, like he's cooking for Mr. Burns and everything just catches on fire. Pours milk in the cereal, catches on fire.
Yeah, literally.
So we've gone through a fair bit of what Altus is trying to do there. Okay, so we'll start with the mental side of things. Like we've talked to a lot of people in the past. Mental side of sim racing is huge. How big is that for you though? How are you preparing for yourself for races mentally?
Mentally, it's really, really difficult, and I think a lot of people probably underestimate just how important it is to actually racing. Being able to sort of keep your head, when you've got a car right on your gearbox that is actually faster over the race, and you have 20 laps to defend and hold it off for the race win. It is a very, very mentally challenging sport. So one of the big things I've really sort of focused on, I get a little bit of rubbish for it at the best of times, but one of the biggest helps I've honestly found is meditation
Yep.
before a race. So I'll spend, sometimes 15 to 20 minutes before one of my world championship qualifier races, just sort of, with an app, headphones in my ear, just sort of getting myself as calm, cool, and collected as I can, make myself
Yep.
nice and zen. Um, and yeah, just make sure I'm focusing on my breathing as well. That is one of the big things I've worked on. But again, I've also looked into the psychology of, sports people and working out exactly what makes them tick. How do they block out, distractions? There's a lot of little things like that. I've been looking into all the podcasts and stuff. I've
Yep.
been on reading a lot of like audiobooks or listening to a lot of audiobooks, which are a great, great help. And also just general sort of mental health advice as well, just to sort of keep your head as clear as possible. Because like I said at the start, like this sport is so mentally challenging that if you can be mentally prepared for anything and the driver you're up against isn't, it's almost the race victory already in your hands.
Yeah,
I think
we've just talked. Oh, go, Brad.
I
Go.
was going to say, I think when you're competing at the top level, the disparity between physical skills is so small. So any slight little 5%, 10% edge you can get in another area that other people might not necessarily be tapping into is actually
Yeah.
quite big.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
also, small mistakes at that level can be the difference between a loss and a win. And we talked about it with the V's a few times this season. When red mist comes in, and you just lose your brain and you make a silly mistake, that's your race over. So if you can avoid that, you be more consistent for starters, but you get those few extra places and wins that you never would have got before. You got any tactics that you use during a race if you do start finding yourself going mentally?
So really it's just sort of making sure I'm breathing. So I'm always trying to take note of two different things. Is how my breathing rate is. I'll always have a smartwatch on me.
Yep.
So I can just quickly on a straight check my heart rate and see how I'm actually how my heart rate is and how my breathing pattern is. And the second thing I'll always focus on as well is that I'm not death gripping the wheel, because that is another sign that I am feeling stressed. So if I
Yep.
do that, I need to make sure I focus on my breathing for a few laps. Like I will honestly forget about my driving for a lap or two, and I might lose like 3 to 4 tenths a lap just on driving performance, but I'll focus on my breathing
Yep.
just to sort of get myself back into that rhythm. So death gripping the wheel obviously is a big sign that I'm stressed and I need to sort of control myself a little bit more. And then yeah, obviously watching my breathing rate as well. So obviously mid race, it's a little bit difficult to do all of that. So that's why I try and do a lot of my mental preparation before the race, just to make sure that I don't get into that position in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. So the physical side of things. So you've got, as you talked about, the gym in the house. Um, how important is that side of it? Especially, is that a more important for enduros, or just keeping your mind? Also, another way to keep your mind alert the whole way through is if your body's in peak performance.
Yeah, it's sort of the second part there, because obviously, the more fitter you are in terms of a cardio and also a physical strength point of view, you can have a lower resting heart rate. You're going to be a bit calmer in these situations. And obviously, you'll be able to deliver blood flow to the working muscles a lot easier as well. So that's you're not getting cramps, so you're not, getting fatigued as much during a race run. Obviously, in Rallycross, the races are 10 minutes. So it's really not a huge factor in terms of fatigue. But obviously, the
Yep.
stress levels are quite high from a sprint format. But then obviously I do still quite like my GT racing, so that's where the fatigue factor does come in, because obviously at Altus we do push ourselves quite a lot, and it's not uncommon for us to be going 4 or 5 hours in a row and
Yep.
at a top split level. You can't really afford to pace yourself. It's got to be flat out. So being in that good physical shape is very, very important. And obviously, um, just to name two other drivers off the top of my head right now, Cooper Webster and Jordan Caruso, they do real world racing as well. So, being able to train here at the, in any gym facilities or even at the Altus house, if they were to come over, they're able to really help themselves out for the real world as well as their sim racing.
So have you got sort of workout patterns from them, or you've got someone outside, like a personal trainer, helping you with that kind of stuff?
So we're pretty lucky. So obviously Simon's family does live here, and his partner is actually a qualified personal trainer. So that makes life very, very easy on us.
Definitely does. And how have you found a change? How long you've been working with her as a personal trainer?
So we've been at the house for about 4 or 5 weeks now. So it has been a little while. And obviously, it does take time for a few little patterns to sort of come in, but I have felt a lot better so far, being able to train, physically as well, just to sort of make sure that we're covering all aspects of our driving. So, there's nothing too noticeable just yet, but I'm sure over the years, or even over the months, that there will be big benefits to doing that.
Yeah, definitely. So someone comes to you and says, "We've got a house. We want you to live in our house. It's going to be built for you to be the best racing person that you can possibly be." Like, how did you take that news?
It was very, very odd to get my head around at first. It was December 2020 when Simon
Yeah.
first gave me the call and was like, "Hey, this is a possibility that this could be happening down the line," and it was a big shock at first because nothing like this had been spoken about before. It was totally out of the blue. So to get that phone call was very, very confusing. And then obviously over the next few months, I was messaging Simon like every day, just like, "Hey, any news? Like, what's going on? Like, tell me." And then yeah, it wasn't really until probably May or so where we really sort of got it finalized and we're able to make it a bit of a reality. So it's been a rushy, sort of few months, but obviously we're still building the house. We're still getting everything finalized for the rest of our drivers to come in as well. So yeah, still a bit of work to go, but so far it's been really, really cool. And yeah, like I said, big shock to the system when I first got that news.
What was the like? Where what was your thoughts when you moved in? Like, this is going to be it for me. This is going to like make my career, or were you nervous as hell, or what's it like when you actually
Uh,
first moved in? What have I
yeah, it
done?
was. Yeah, kind of. It was a big, big step, and it was hard to get my head around that. I'm sort of getting paid to live in a house, a very nice area as well. Um, all because I'm a little bit okay at a racing game. Like that was very hard to get my head around at first, and very, very cool. But obviously, it was a big move for me, going from Geelong to Melbourne. I know it's not the biggest move ever, but it feels like it, having lived in Geelong for my entire life. So moving a fair way away from my family and everything. Um, it was a little bit weird at first, but yeah, it was sort of okay. This is serious now. This isn't a joke. And yeah, we sort of got straight into it, building all our sim rigs and getting everything ready. And yeah, it's been good, but a big change in lifestyle for me.
So, what's a typical day hold for Beau in the house at the Altus built?
Yeah, so really, we sort of at the moment I try to wake up quite early in the day because obviously Rallycross starts at 7 a.m. for us, and I don't want
Yeah.
to wake up at like 6:30 and just wing it. I want to be awake quite early, so usually
Is
I'm
that not how
waking.
you're supposed to race? Jesus. Okay.
No,
Note to
apparently not.
self.
I only
Note
I
to
only
self.
found this out recently. um, so yeah, I'll often wake around good old 3 a.m. in the morning, which isn't the nicest time. But wake up, sort of have a
Can
shower,
confirm.
get yeah, that's not nice at all. Get some food into me, and then I'll jump on for about a 3 hour sim session. So try and aim for a certain lap target. In Rallycross, I'll usually aim for around 125 laps. And then I'll head off, have some lunch, do some physical training, do some mental training as well, do some meditation and everything I need to do. Have a few fun and games for a few hours, just sort of get myself away from racing for an hour or two, and then come back on for an afternoon session for another 125 laps or so.
So, two things in there I want to touch on. First, do you use much data when you're trying to get that lap time? And is that what you're focusing on, or you're focusing on corners, or just consistency?
Yeah, so we do spend a lot of time both in the virtual racing school telemetry logger and also Motec. So I use virtual racing school a lot for driving technique. So looking against my teammates, seeing brake traces, throttle traces, gears, and everything, making sure we're getting the most out of each other. And in Rallycross, it's very nice because me and my teammate Luis Nunez, we're both very, very evenly matched. But how we achieve our lap speed is totally different. So we're always going through telemetry, looking for the weak spots against one another where we can both improve. And that's been really, really nice to sort of push ourselves to that next level. And then for the Motec side of things, we're looking at car setup. So going through damper histograms, traction loss graphs, traction graphs, all the little details to make our cars faster because like I sort of said before, we only just moved into the Subaru for this year, so it's a brand new car. We knew we had a lot of catching up to do compared to the established teams like Coanda and Apex Racing Team to sort of get a fast Subaru going for us. So a lot of telemetry and data work goes into each race.
I think it's a very underutilized thing in sim racing, like the data side of things. I know we've kind of looked at our own data from time to time, but we've finally decided to start actually using the team stuff on VRS to sort of share and try and talk a bit more through it with each other and find out where we're better at certain corners. And in 30 minutes of sitting and looking at data, you can find half a second, like it's nothing
absolutely.
compared to trying to run around and do laps for an hour and a half by yourself and not get anywhere.
Yeah,
massive.
Yeah, well, it even helps with consistency where I can see where he's braking, where I was going in faster, and I thought I was going faster, but I was actually a lot more out of control. So definitely, that's why I was interested to see the data side of things for you guys. The second part of that would be, what do you do in that free time? What is it that takes you away from racing? What do you get into?
it's very hard to distract myself from racing. I have to say, I'm a little bit of a sort of one mind guy. So honestly, in that 2 to 3 hours that I sort of have a break, I usually find myself playing on a controller with like the dirt rally games or something. Just I end up back on racing, which is bad.
Yep.
But when I can pull myself away, I love like the action sort of like storyline based games, like Life is Strange, like the Telltale games. They're very, very cool. The classic Grand Theft Auto 5s and everything. Saints Row is a brilliant game as well. It's
Yep.
absolute lunacy. So yeah, sometimes that is good just to pull yourself away from racing. But yeah, I've got to say, if I were to like split my like Steam playtime up, I reckon it'd be at least 90% racing. I'm definitely one track minded, but a break's always good.
To see
definitely.
some GTA 5 roleplay streams, being the world's fastest GTA driver, or
Look, I can try and make that happen. We'll see how we go.
There it is. You heard it here first, everyone. So let's move on to the Rallycross, the World Championship bid that you've got going at the moment. You've given up everything. You're not doing anything but Rallycross. How's it going so far?
It is going very well. So we're currently 2 rounds down into the pro qualifiers. I'm trying to get my way back into the World Championship. I did make it last year. I didn't get in the top 10, sadly, just due to missing a round or two. So trying to make it back into the championship this year. And actually, just last week, we had round 2, which was a 6.8K soft in top split, so
Wow.
strength of field. And we actually managed to win that. So that was the second highest dirt road race ever, and we got the win. So we're currently well above the cut line, which is good, but Rallycross is a crazy sport. Lots of contacts, lots of weird turn ones as well, to say the least. So we can't count our chickens before they hatch, but we're looking good.
And where's the next race? Oh, sorry. Where's the next race?
So the next race is going to be at Brands Hatch, which is a brand new circuit. We've never done any races or Rallycross races at a high level there. So this is sort of a big experience for us. So that's why I'm really sort of being super strict with my lap counts every day, getting the practice in, because for everyone, it's a big unknown for us. Like no one's really done an event here. So lots of efforts going in. I'm not looking forward to it. I think it is an absolutely garbage track, to keep it PG friendly. If you don't want my PG friendly opinion, get the bleeps ready. But I'm looking to sort of just bank points next round to go on to round 4, which is a track I absolutely love and I go very strong at, which is Lunkbarn and Hell. It's a very good circuit for me. So round 3, bank points, and then move on to round 4, really.
how does the qualifying system work for the World Championships? What's the cutoff point, and how do you get in?
Yeah, so races are held for us in Australia in the AEST time zone at 7 a.m. on Thursday mornings. So it's basically just one race for the week. So that series only has one race. So it's not like you get multiple chances through the week to score points. You just get one shot at it, and that's it. And yeah, it just sort of works like a normal iRacing official, where the strength of field sort of determines the points. Points go into the series. And how it will be this year is, at the moment, it's confirmed as at least 18 drivers in the top 18 in the standings will get their World Championship license. But there's rumors that Coanda actually aren't going to be returning next year, which is a bit of a shock to the system. Hasn't been confirmed yet, but we could move up to the top 20 in the series who will get their World Championship license.
That's it. That's pretty cool. We had an interview with Alex Bergeron the other day. How is he going in the World Championships? He said he didn't even realize they were starting until about half an hour before the first race.
That sounds like Alex Bergeron, to be honest.
Yeah.
No, he's doing very well. So he's actually above the cutoff at the
Yeah.
moment as well. So I believe he's come runner-up in third split twice now. So he's getting the I rating up. So we might see him in second split soon. But yeah, he's banking points. He's doing very well as well. So that'd be good to see him in the Rallycross World Championship. Obviously, we all know his dirt oval credentials, but
Yes,
needs to
he's
prove his dirt road.
Yes, definitely does. Now, are we seeing much of a mix this year in the qualifiers in cars, or everyone's just going Subaru?
Yeah, so I think overall we are seeing mostly Subaru domination. I think everyone sort of gave up on the VW and the Ford at the moment, just because Rallycross. The issue with the other cars is purely just that they have such a short wheelbase that they don't have the same amount of traction on a fresh track when there's
Yeah.
lots of dirt on the circuit, and obviously that means the Subarus will typically out qualify towards the front every single time compared to the VW and Ford. And because the races are so short, there's just not enough time on a worn track for the VW and Ford to make up the time lost that they lose in qualifying positions. So we sort of all use the Subaru just because we can qualify well, we can get up the front of the field nice and easily, and just defend for the rest of the race from the other cars. So I think last week at Atlanta, there wasn't a single car that wasn't a Subaru in top split. So it's very one-sided.
That is a shame. What do you expect from iRacing going forward? Do you expect more tracks that they're going to drop soon? Because they've obviously this year they started making up tracks, which has been quite interesting.
Yeah, they have. They've started doing a lot of different things. I believe Sonoma, which came out in 2018, was also a fantasy track. Yeah, so I don't know how to feel about that. I'd rather the real world stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, they've got to do what they've got to do. Although I do believe they have Knock Hill Raceway, which will be coming out very, very soon, and that has a rallycross circuit. So we're crossing fingers that they haven't just scanned the tarmac track; they've scanned the rallycross as well, which would be cool to see. But yeah, Rallycross definitely gets probably the least content of any of the categories. So, you know, if we get one track a year, we usually count ourselves pretty lucky, unfortunately.
That's it. So how do you handle the Joker lap situation? Like, do you usually have a plan going into it straight away, or do you just play it as it comes along?
So yeah, we obviously have a rough game plan that we want to follow, but obviously things get mixed up very, very quickly. So I actually have a spotter in my ears, a bit like you would in NASCAR, who's sort of keeping an eye on everyone's Joker strategies, knowing if we have to react to anyone to cut them off, or if we should really just go totally opposite to the rest of the field. So he's really I have full faith in my spotters. I just trust them 100% to make the right calls because I'm very lucky to have an ex-World Championship driver as my spotter. So I know he's got the experience. I trust his judgment calls. That's gone very well for us so far this season. But typically if it's a shortcut, because obviously in the Joker lap situations, you sometimes have a shortcut. You sometimes have a longer version of the lap. If it's a longer version of the lap, we like to take it as late as possible, just purely so we can get the gap to the cars behind us naturally and then take our long lap at the end. So we don't, because if you take the long version of the lap on the first lap, you'll obviously come out in traffic. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. And then for a shortcut, it's vice versa. If you find yourself in the race lead, you'll usually take it as soon as possible, sort of make sure you can't get overcut by anyone. And then if you find yourself at the back of the pack with a shortcut Joker, you usually take it as late as possible. So you have that clean air after everyone else is jokered, and I can use that to get a bit more margin back.
How much difference does that make to the map, to the race if you do get that all wrong?
A massive difference because obviously, like I said, these races only go for about 7 to 8 minutes max. So if you find yourself stuck behind a car for 3 or 4 laps, that's 40% of the race you find yourself stuck behind someone. So getting that right, getting yourself into clean air, which is what we're all really trying to do, is get ourselves our own little space on track to hit our lap times that we want. That is a massive, massive deal. So there has been so many races, and I'm not going to spoil any real world results for anyone, but if anyone saw the real world round 1 of the FIA World Rallycross Championship, that should prove just how important the Joker strategy is, because that totally turns that race on its head, and it's the same for us. It can make or break a race every single time.
So have you done any real life racing?
I would absolutely love to, but sadly, just the finances were never there for me. I remember obviously growing up, I was always begging my mum, just can we please do a little bit of go karting? Can I, get a go kart or something? But the finances were never there. So
Yeah.
when I was sort of younger on the PlayStation 3 doing Gran Turismo 6, I really sort of was pushing myself quite a lot on there to get into the GT Academy program that they had, which
Yeah.
obviously we touched on a bit earlier with Matt Simmons winning that and getting a full drive in the Blancpain GT series in a factory back Nissan. So that was sort of the route that I thought could have been an opportunity. But then before I really sort of got really serious into Gran Turismo and started getting quite competitive, that program sadly sort of fell apart a little bit. And there's been a few on iRacing that have sort of given that opportunity, but nothing that I feel I could have probably won in terms of just like the car track categories or anything. So haven't found myself on a real world track yet, but I would love to one day. Absolutely.
I was gonna say we've seen some drivers. I think like Jackson Susan Harlow and a few of those guys have done some testing in the V8. I think was it Brad Jones or was one of the teams?
Brad Jones Racing at Winton, I believe.
Yeah, so still hope there might come up. You
Yeah.
might find yourself in a rallycross car one day.
Oh, that would be so cool. I would love that. So if anyone here's watching this, hit me up.
That's it. We've seen the Altus make the jump into the real world sooner or later. You just mark my words, it'll happen. So we haven't even touched your streaming, like content creating and things like that. Explain to us what you do.
Yep. So for a little while there, I sort of focused mainly on YouTube. So I liked making sort of tutorials and sort of giving a bit of an overview of my thoughts on the sort of world of sim racing. So my channel is just called Beau Albert if anyone wants to jump on over there. So I want to get back into doing a bit more YouTube soon, but obviously it's a big time commitment to do all the editing and recording the footage. So I found myself doing a lot more streaming lately, and I finally have the internet because in my house in Geelong, my internet speed was about 7 megabytes download and about 500 kbs upload. So at the Altus house, our speeds are considerably better. So in the last, sort of 5 weeks, I've been able to get back into streaming, and we've had some good success there as well over at twitch.tv/Beau Albert. Sort of just streaming, some random races, having fun with the community. I like doing last to first challenges on my second account as well. Just have a bit of fun with racing as well. Because I think, so many times in sim racing, we can get caught up, with how serious it is and trying to get the most out of each other, that you sort of forget to let your hair down every now and then.
Yep.
So when I do stream, I try and just have as much fun as possible and get myself into some pretty crazy situations.
7 over 0.5 isn't too bad for Geelong, seeing as they only just got electricity, so...
You are honestly not wrong.
I do the mid pack to the last. That's my challenge. I try and do. I got that down pat. So how do you find Twitch to deal with now since you went on YouTube for so long?
Yeah, no, it's a very different community, but I also love having that instant sort of communication with the chat because on YouTube, there's only so much communication you can get through YouTube comments and all that. Whereas, sort of being able to have that bounce back conversation with people in chat and sort of ask them, more questions and they can ask me questions, having that sort of one-on-one time almost is a lot more fun, I think. And that's why I think, honestly, I probably prefer streaming over YouTube content just because you do have that interaction with people. And, there's also times where the chat will help me out in a race as well. They'll be like, you're sort of misjudging this corner a little bit. You can sort of maximize that a bit more, and I can take that on board and improve myself as well. So, and there's other times where someone will ask, for my thoughts, from my experience and everything on what they should be doing in their situation. So, it's a really nice bounce back where they can help me, I can help them, and just have a bit more fun with it. But it's a very, very fun community, and I'm very grateful for everyone that jumps into my chat because they are an awesome bunch of people.
Now, did you naturally talk while you were racing before, just to yourself, or is this something you've got to learn to do now you're streaming?
Yeah, it's something I do have to sort of teach myself to do a little bit more. Obviously, like I said, I race on my second account usually rather than my main account just to protect my I rating and stuff for like my pro competition. So, I can afford to talk a little bit more on my second account purely because I'm not worried about messing anything up as much or anything. So, it is a big challenge though to sort of be going down a straight, looking for your brake marker while, answering someone's question on the top screen, not even looking at this screens down below. So it is a big challenge and it does take a while to get my head around, but it's been a fun challenge, and I've loved it.
My next question was going to be, how many times have you crashed reading chat or missed
Too
the
many.
braking market? Have you
Well
punted?
beyond lost count.
Have you punted anyone by doing it? Like just
Oh,
completely with the brake?
yes.
Yeah. And do you get on and
Yeah.
say, "Look, sorry, that's chat's fault. My bad."
Yeah, don't report me, blame my chat. It has happened before, and I feel so bad for it. But yeah, just a lot of apologies have to go out and sort of just brush it off and move on to the next one. But I've gotten a lot better with that, where I know if I'm getting like within 4 to 5 seconds of a braking marker, just eyes on my main
Concentrate.
screen and get that corner right and look at chat next time around.
If you
Yeah, I've
haven't
got
headed over to Beau's stream, by the way, definitely do, because some of the visuals are the most best looking streaming content you'll find. The way the cars look and how you've got it set up is absolutely mint. It's really good.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I've got someone in chat that I always he tells me he's going to flog me or something. I can't remember what he says, but if you're reading this, then you know you're in trouble basically. So he hates me reading chat, but I love it. It's nothing more fun than just racing around going, oh, I'm actually racing here, but I'm just having a conversation with old mate down wherever it is.
Yeah.
So the community that you're building in your Twitch and the community, you don't really get that community with YouTube, I guess, but the community of iRacing itself, do you ever like get a chance to get out and actually not, well, obviously COVID's a problem at the moment, but actually interact with any of these people?
Yeah, so I do. So obviously, you know, going well beyond the COVID times, obviously there's the big event in Melbourne called PAX,
Yep.
Which we always head down and help out with Logitech and all that stuff as Altus drivers. Yeah, so fingers crossed that goes ahead this year, absolutely. But that was really, really cool because I had so many drivers from different teams that I'd never met before. It's like, hey bro, how you going? And it's really, really cool because sometimes it is easy to sort of forget in sim racing that it is an actual person you're racing against. It's not just another car. There is actually a person. There is actually someone to talk to behind that virtual race car driving around the circuit. So those events are absolutely brilliant. I've had a chance to do a few of them now, including we did a big sim racing meetup at Sydney Motorsport Park a few years ago as well, which was so much fun. So yeah, if we can bugger these lockdowns off, obviously I understand why lockdowns are there, and I'm glad they're there. But if we can bugger the COVID off, then I would love to get back to that. Absolutely.
It's absolutely fascinating to me. I went to PAX like 7 or 8 years in a row, most of it as media. I didn't know iRacing community had even there was anyone there. I saw Logitech set up, and and everyone's like, "Oh, jump on the rigs." I'm like, "No, I can't really be bothered," all that kind of stuff. And but because I was in a completely different side of the industry, I'm like, "Yeah, no, iRacing, they wouldn't know what PAX even is." And all of a sudden, everyone I've interviewed is like, "Yeah, we went to PAX every year." I'm like, so look, I'm so excited if it goes ahead this year, but I'm really planning on it not. I've got the tickets ready to go, but yeah, I can't see it happening. So quickly, what was it like when you put that first piece of content up on YouTube, or when you turned that stream on the first time? Did you get nervous?
I did, yeah. So the first time I ever uploaded onto YouTube would have been way back in 2013. And it was literally just my laptop's webcam facing the computer screen. That's how I recorded it. And that was, it was absolutely shocking quality. But at the time, I thought it was brilliant.
That's what an idea.
Yeah, I know. It was just very makeshift. It made it work. But I threw that on YouTube, and I was absolutely right. It got like 30 views, and I thought that was a massive success.
How many times did you check analytics in a day?
So these days, I try to only check like once or twice a week.
Yeah, but
back then, I would have been checking probably every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just like, is there a new view? Is there a new view? And every time it went up like one extra view, I was ecstatic. It was so good. First time on Twitch, obviously I was a bit more mature at that point. I probably would have first streamed when I was 19 or 20. So I wasn't as nervous to sort of turn the camera on, but I also didn't know how sort of the reaction to me streaming would be, because a lot of people sort of saw me as this person who only liked competing and didn't like to sort of have much fun at all or anything. So I wasn't sure how the community would sort of see it, but the reaction was great. And when my internet's played ball back in Geelong, I always tried to stream as much as I could. But now that I'm able to stream full time, it's really, really good. And I don't get nervous at all these days, just purely because I know the community I have behind me is so good that even on a bad day, they can always cheer me up. So it's really, really good.
How often does your stream not work?
Every second day.
I'm glad. I'm so
Nice
glad
and
it's not
straight
just me.
answer.
Everyone's the same. The world of a streamer, like when it turns on and it works, that's the most you see everyone. It's the 95 times that you turn it on and like the audio's not there, and or this
Yeah.
bit's not going to that bit, and then you just turn it off and like, okay, people don't
Oh,
see that kind of stuff.
every time I turn Streamlabs on, because I use Streamlabs to do all my streaming, my camera's in a completely different position. I'm like, how did you get over there? What are you doing? Come back. It's just ridiculous, but that's the joys of
How
the
many
job, I
webcams
guess.
have you got? Just out of interest.
So I've got 3 that
Yeah.
I have. I tend to only use one, but I do have. So I've got a main camera that's a DSLR camera that I use. So obviously it's fairly good quality. But then I also have Logitech C922 cameras as well. And I just try to mix those camera views up a little bit. So I've got one sort of showing off my pedal cam, sort of like they do in the V8 supercars, just showing off my footwork. And then another I usually try and have quite far away is like a full sort of sim rig look, basically. So obviously my DSLR camera looks at my face and my wheel work. My second camera looks at my pedals, but then the third one's just like what's happening in the room, basically, type thing.
Yeah. And how long does it take for you to set up that, or are you one of those people who's always tinkering with the setup?
Yeah, I am usually always tinkering. I think I've changed in the last 5 weeks. I've changed my camera positioning about 4 different times, which isn't good. But yeah, when I get something how I like it, I can usually keep it there for a long time without tinkering. So I think I've had my stream overlays the same for about a year and a half now. And I always want to change it. I'm like, I want to change it. I want to try this or that. But I try and keep it the same as much as I can just for consistency.
No problems. Can we quickly touch on what is this rig that you're sitting in right now? What have you got in front of you? Name everything, because there's about a million different things I can see right now.
Yeah, no, it's a very busy sim rig. So the actual rig itself is a Hybrid Racing Simulations P2Z. Very, very nice chassis. A little bit expensive, but there's a reason for that. It's brilliant quality and very much overkill, but I love that. So I have a Jinx shifter beside me, so the full brake bias and anti-roll bar controls as well.
Very pretty. Jinx,
Which is
if you're listening, we're happy to take sponsorships right now.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. And if they don't want to sponsor you, maybe Huiskenveld will with their beautiful handbrake. Obviously, being in Rallycross, I do need a handbrake.
How important is the handbrake? Because I get differing opinions. Some people just say, nah, you don't need it except for maybe one track at Phoenix or one corner at Phoenix or something like that. Other people say, yeah, it's a must. How important is it in Rallycross?
It depends on who you ask. Once again, even in the World Championship, there's difference of opinion. For me, I do use it a little bit. Like, there's definitely tracks I don't touch it at all.
Yep.
Brands Hatch, which we're heading to this week, I don't use it at all. I would say there's probably 3 tracks I use it at quite consistently.
Yep.
But then the world champion of last year, Johan Huff, didn't use the handbrake at all. But then his teammate, who obviously they work together quite a lot, did use the handbrake.
Yep.
So there's just massive difference of opinion. It's all personal preference and driving style. So really does depend on who you ask.
So no help for you, Peter.
No, none at all. We both have the Husky pedals now and the HRS faceplate, so we are halfway. We can just say we're sponsored by them. It's all good. We'll just chuck a sticker up.
I think I'm sponsoring them at this point.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, let's go back to the handbrake. So next, what else is there?
Yep. So I use a Hybrid Racing Simulations Momo Mod 27C Pro SLI wheel rim. Try saying that 3 times fast. It's a very nice bit of kit. But I am looking to upgrade soon to a Cube Controls GTX wheel. In terms of the wheelbase, I use a Virtual Racing School Direct Force Pro, and I've also got the Direct Force pedals as well, which are just an insane bit of kit. I cannot recommend them enough. I went from them over Huiskenveld Ultimates, and these pedals just blew me away. They are fantastic. And then, so for the rest of my setup, really, I use a 49-inch ultra-wide screen, so very, very nice. For those that are going to ask the inevitable question, do I prefer it over triples? I actually do, just purely from the performance standpoint, obviously, because you only have to render one screen compared to 3. And I don't feel like I lose much visibility, so that's a big plus for me. And then the rest of my peripherals are all Logitech gaming stuff. So I've got a G915 keyboard, a G903 mouse, and I use a Pro X headset.
How surprising! Logitech, all the other gear. That's
I wouldn't have guessed it. Hey,
no idea. So, what's your most important piece on that rig? What do you?
I would say the pedals. I think if you have a limited budget and you sort of need to do everything on a budget, but you can afford to buy one item that you can, go a slightly higher quality product, I would never skimp on pedals. I think they are the single most important bit of equipment you can ever have. So yeah, I would always take a good set of pedals over a good wheelbase, because how you're able to trail brake the car, how you get on the throttle, that makes so much difference to your lap time. Whereas there's only so many different ways you can turn a car into a corner with a steering wheel.
So I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, probably just from when I started racing, is like so much of how you turn is actually with your feet. Like how you get the car to rotate or those kind of things, you actually do it with your feet, not even the steering wheel. Just so that's definitely something I think a lot of people don't even realize. They think it's all about the steering wheel.
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely.
We've taken you away for an hour. That's probably long enough, to be honest. Where can people find you for the next cooking stream that you're going to do, or / Grand Theft Auto 5 role playing stream? Where can people find you? Give us all the places, everything.
Yeah, so the best place to stay in touch with me on a regular basis is obviously my Twitter, which is Beau Albert 06. And then obviously the rest of my socials are all pretty much Beau Albert, which includes twitch.tv/Beau Albert. I'm Beau Albert on YouTube. And I'm also Beau Albert Sim Racing on Facebook as well. I like to keep all the updates there. So it'd be awesome if you could jump on into one of my latest streams and, just say g'day. I'm always welcome to say, we'll ask how you are, and obviously we'll have a chat as well. And feel free to fire any questions at me as well. So always happy to communicate with everyone there. So look forward to seeing some people from the podcast over there soon.
Hopefully.
Pete will be over there trying to work out how he can get a top 10 this season in his league. So he'll be
how to finish a race in that's all I'm after. So look, we'll quickly let Braden do his shout outs, let me do my shout outs. We'll shout out to our sponsors and then we'll wrap this up. So Braden, where can people find you, mate?
Yeah, so streaming here and there over at twitch.tv/the1dwade. And if you want to hear me talking about anything else, probably Olympics at the moment, it's going to be mostly over on Twitter at Braden Talks.
Find us at Locked On Lads on Facebook, Locked On Lads on Twitch, Locked On Lads YT on YouTube, which is where this podcast will go up, besides our actual podcast RSS feed. If you haven't subscribed to that, just look up Locked On iRacing on any of your podcast apps of choice. You will find it, and then subscribe. Give us a review. There's a couple new reviews come through. I'd like to thank all those people who have done that, and the ratings we give about 4.8, 4.9 at the moment out of 5, which is really good. So thank you to everyone who's taken that time. Just helps us get the word out there. LockedOnLads.com/Discord. We do not have an Olympics channel in there. There is nothing being talked about in there. You can join though. We there's a lot of activity in that channel. I don't know what it's about. I don't go in there. But thank you to a few people like CD Simtography, which is Clayton Davies' photography business. Go check that out on Facebook, CD Simtography. Also, brand new one, Brewster Coffee, which is BREWSTR.coffee. Apparently, you can find the best coffee in your local area all around the world, which is a pretty cool little website. And hopefully, I'm going to just say it anyway, 24/7 Race Control. Thank you for your help as well. But, Beau, you've been an absolute legend tonight, mate. Thank you so much. We'll get you on again sometime soon, hopefully, especially when these new announcements come out. We'd love to chat to a few people from Altus at some stage when these announcements come, so we can get onto our news and results podcast, but we'll talk to you about that later. But thank you, mate, and good luck with the
Rallycross World Championship. Yeah.
Cheers, boys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you going to win this thing or what?
Oh, I'm going to win it so easily.
Okay, so when you win, we'll get you on, and we'll just do the congratulatory thing now, like well done on your win, and just get pre-recorded to be fine. Nothing could go wrong with that.
No.
Thank you so much, mate. Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, guys. All the best.